Hello and welcome back to the channel. Finished our tour through the historic villages of Portugal. Today we visit Coimbra, one of the most important cities in Portugal, and which in the past was the capital of the Portuguese kingdom. Then we move to Batalha, where we will visit his beautiful monastery, chosen as one of the Seven Wonders of Portugal. And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video. Coimbra, which has 150,000 inhabitants, is one of the most important cities in Portugal, and famous for its prestigious university, one of Europe's oldest. As for parking, you have no problem, because next to the river you find a large and free parking, and from which, crossing the rivers, you get in a short walk to the historic center. Several archaeological structures, such as the Roman aqueduct, date the birth of Coimbra in the Roman era, becoming between 1131 and 1255, capital of the Kingdom of Portugal, creating in 1537 its famous university. We begin the visit, crossing the Mondego River by the pedestrian bridge Pedro e Inês, which leads us to the Baixa area, one of the two areas in which the city is divided. This area is located on the bank of the river, and is where the majority of restaurants and cafes are located, being the shopping area and with the most atmosphere. We began to climb to the other area, the upper area, where most of the city's monuments are located. For the climb, if you find yourself strong, you will find some shortcuts in the form of steep stairs, which will gradually make you gain height, and have a broader view of the city. Already in the upper zone, we reach the botanical garden, to which you can enter for free. It's not the most beautiful botanical garden we've ever seen, looking more like a big park behind the university, but it's still worth a visit. This green space, which occupies an area of approximately 13 hectares, is located on a land donated by the Benedictine friars, and the gardens were founded in 1773 by the Marquis of Pombal, who was responsible for the appearance of the modern Lisbon. The garden is distributed in several stairs, levels and avenues, in which the forest of exotic trees and bamboo occupies 2/3 of the total area. It has a large greenhouse, dating from 1859, and is one of the oldest iron architectural buildings in Portugal. It is worth visiting, strolling through its wooded avenues, and enjoying different squares and fountains. The main entrance to the botanical park is through the San Sebastian aqueduct, built in the 16th century, following the trace on the remains of the ancient Roman aqueduct. We arrive at the famous University of Coimbra, specifically the Dom Dinis Square, where the castle was once situated, which was demolished to build here an astronomical observatory, which finally was built elsewhere. Nearby is the Chemical Laboratory, a beautiful building from the year 1775, and whose interior houses the Museum of Science of the University of Coimbra. In front of the Chemical Laboratory we find the Jesus College, founded in 1542 by the Company of Jesus, and whose purpose was to prepare missionaries for all the territories discovered and conquered by the Portuguese. On one of the sides of this school is located the new cathedral. With the expulsion of Portugal from the Company of Jesus in 1759, the property of the college passed to the university, and the church went to the category of cathedral, the new Cathedral of Coimbra in 1772. The facade stands out for its mixture of styles, manieristic in the lower part and Baroque in the upper part, style that also stands in the interior, in the main altar and in the side chapels. Next to the cathedral we find the National Museum Machado de Castro, located in the former Episcopal Palace, and converted into a museum of art. And we reached the most famous place of the University of Coimbra, the so-called Palace of Schools, to which we accessed by the Faria Gate, which was the old entrance to the royal palace. Passing through the door, we find a courtyard where the statue of King John III stands, surrounded by facades of emblematic buildings, such as the Joanina Library, the Clock Tower, the Chapel of St. Michael or the Sala dos Capellos. The clock tower, to which you can climb, was built in the 18th century, and has 4 clocks and 4 bells that once governed academic life. The Sala dos Capellos is the former Hall of the Throne, which in the 17th century was adapted to receive the most important acts of academic life, such as the opening of the course, doctoral theses, investiture of doctors or taking possession of rectors. The Chapel of St. Michael, from the 12th century, is the old oratory of the royal palace, being the object of important reforms of enlargement during the Manueline period. Although the most important monument of the whole ensemble is the Joanina Library, named so because this work was carried out in the reign of John V, the magnanimous king, whose large portrait occupies the background of the library. It is one of the most famous Baroque-style libraries in Europe, gathering a literary treasure of priceless value, housed on exotic wooden shelves. We left the university, and we began to go down and found the old cathedral, built in Romanesque styles in the 12th century, being the only church that has survived the period of the Reconquest, highlighting in its exterior the appearance of castle with battlements, and in the interior, an elegant Gothic cloister. We continue down towards the center, and among the alleys we find the House of Subripas, ancient defensive tower of the city wall, adapted as a residence in the 16th century, highlighting on the outside its beautiful entrance in Manueline style, and the windows in Renaissance style. Descending through a steep street, we find the Tricana of Coimbra, a bronze statue that reminds the women of Coimbra of the late 19th century, who with a pitcher, descended to Mondego River to collect water, and that was very present in Portuguese literature and especially in the Fathers. Nearby we find the tower and the Arch of Almedina, the main gateway to the inner walls of the city of Coimbra, whose foundations date back to the time of Islamic occupation, forming part of the set of gates and towers of the wall of Coimbra of almost 2 kilometers in length. Very close is the Arc de Barbacana, built to reinforce the defense of the city, and by which we exit the old walled site. A little further down we find the Commerce Square, a little crowded and beautiful square, with some of the facades of the buildings adorned with tiles. At one of the ends of the square is the Church of James, a Romanesque construction of the late 12th century, which welcomed the pilgrims who made the way of St. James, showing on the side a decoration of shells alluding to the saint. And so gradually, we reach the bank of the river, to a small but beautiful square, presided over by a statue in honor of the politician Joaquin Antonio de Aguilar, on which the facades of the Hotel Astoria and the Bank of Portugal stand out. And next to the Fountain of Coimbra, located between the Santa Clara Bridge and the Pedro e Inés Bridge, we ended our visit to Coimbra, where, despite the weather, we could enjoy this beautiful city. Batalha, which has about 15,000 inhabitants, is famous mainly for its great monastery, considered one of the Seven Wonders of Portugal. As for parking, you will have no problem, as you have spacious and free parking, even for caravans, and they are located next to the monastery. As we say, Batalha is famous above all for its monastery, and the villa was founded by King Joaquin I, together with the monasteries, to thank the divine help granted in the victory of the Battle of Aljubarrota, on August 14, 1385 against the Castilians. The monastery is officially called the Monastery of Santa Maria de Vitória, and is considered one of the Seven Wonders of Portugal, being also declared a World Heritage Site. The monastery took 2 centuries to build, from the 14th to the 16th centuries, during the reign of 7 monarchs, and through which 15 architects passed, and despite the imposing of the building, it never came to be finished. Built in Gothic style, on the main facade, the entrance porch stands out, with 78 sculptures related to the Old Testament, and finished on its top, with a scene of the coronation of the Virgin, as well as the shields of John I and Philippa of Lancaster. Inside, the church was the first building, surprising its imposing central nave with very high columns, and the colorful 66 glass windows, which give a special light to the whole. To the right of the entrance, we have the Founder's Chapel, one of the most important buildings of the monastery. This square floor and octagonal center building, adorned with beautiful glass windows, houses in the center, the tomb of Don John I and his English wife, Philippa of Lancaster, whose marriage represented in 1387, a strong alliance between Portugal and England. In the southern wall of the chapel, we find the graves of his 4 sons, Peter, John, Ferdinand, and the famous Henry the Sailor, although the tombs were profaned, the same as those of the Alcabasca Monastery, by the French soldiers in 1810. In the monastery we can also enjoy 2 beautiful cloisters. The first to visit is the Cloister of Don Juan I, called the Royal Cloister, built in Gothic style with Manueline details, style that can be seen above all, in the elaborate stone carved from the arches. Next to this cloister, we find the Sala do Capítulo, built in the 15th century, and adorned with a beautiful 16th century glass bar, and whose enormous suspended boulevard was considered so dangerous that for its construction only prisoners sentenced to death were employed. Since 1924, it houses the tomb of the unknown soldier, who, guarded by a permanent guard of honor, is the grave of 2 Portuguese soldiers, killed in battle during the First World War. The other cloister is the Cloister of Alfonso V, smaller than the previous one, and that at 2 levels presented several units, such as bedrooms, nursery, notary, bookstore, warehouse, drawer, wood storage and wine and oil press. In this cloister, in the old refectory and kitchen, today we have a museum dedicated to the Portuguese soldiers, where helmets, decorations, World War I trophies and documents are exhibited. We left the monastery to head to one of the most unique sites of the ensemble, the so-called Imperfect Chapels. Conceptualized as the pantheon of Edward I, they were initiated in his reign, and interrupted with that of John III, and contains in open air the tombs of Eduardo I, Leonor, and Infante John son of Alfonso V. In this chapel are highlighted above all its large arches, and the entrance portal beautifully decorated in Manueline style. And in this unique place, unfinished but beautiful, we end our visit to the imposing monastery, following our visit in the northern half of Portugal, where there are only a few days left of vacation.